Hello, friends. I'm Kerry Farr. Welcome to In Your Corner. My good friend John Duffy joins me today. John is visiting Nashville all the way from Santa Monica, California, right?
That is correct.
That's just right there in L.A. County, isn't it?
Yeah, on the beach.
On the beach. Muscle Beach is in Santa Monica.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I've been there. I haven't done too well.
Oh, it's
Actually,
in Venice, but close.
but actually, you and I have similar backgrounds because I used to be a district manager of a health club chain here in Tennessee years ago, and I owned my own gym. Well, a health club for 10 years, and I was in the boxing business for 20 years. So you and I both been in the gym business all of our lives.
Well, I started out in the gym business as an aerobic instructor and a salesperson, and then moved in. Somehow ended up in Hollywood as a actor and a film producer. I don't know how I got there, but I got lost on the way, I
You got
guess.
lost, but John, you've got an interesting career because you've done 50 films.
Yeah, approximately as a line producer. Yeah, and a producer.
What's a line producer?
So a line producer is the hands-on producer. It's the person who manages everything, does the actual hard work. So I'll put together a schedule for a movie. I'll put together the budget. I'll hire the crew. I'll supervise the actual pre-production and production shoot of the movie, and just make sure that we come in on schedule and on budget. So I'm responsible for all of that, and then just dealing with all the insurance companies and the all the different players, the producers, the directors, and just managing all that. So I'm the kind of hands-on manager of everything.
That sounds like the hardest part of all.
You know, they say there's a meme out there that I love. It's like they say line producing is easy. It's like riding a bike, except you don't know how to ride a bike and the bike's on fire and you're in hell. So that's what they say about being a line producer, how easy it is. But quite frankly, I find it easy because I love people. I love challenges. I love finding solutions. So I really don't find it to be that hard. I just enjoy the process and I enjoy the people.
You got to be a good administrator to do what you do, though.
Yeah, but even more, I think one is having the right mindset, which is true in life too. And I have, a mindset that nothing's impossible and that there's always a solution. So whenever we come up against challenges, I don't focus on the problem or the challenge. I focus on the solution. So, and then having good relationships with people, to me, it's a people business. If you build relationships with everybody and friendships with everybody, and you treat everybody with respect, it becomes easy.
Yeah. And John, but you came out of New York originally, right?
Yeah, I came out of the South Bronx in New York, one of the worst neighborhoods in New York. Dropped out of high school when I was 15 years old, and then went on a journey that eventually got me to there.
Yeah. How in the world did you end up in California?
Well, like most things in life, I say God obviously had a bigger plan for my life than I have for mine, but doors would open, I would go through. So I quit high school when I was 15. I eventually went back to school and was studying. And then all of a sudden I was doing writing in school and college, and I had to do improv, and I got up and I was terrified. I started studying acting. Next thing I know, I was like, okay, I'm going to be an actor. So I started acting. Did theater and film in New York, and then went to LA to pursue acting. And then a buddy of mine, I was a counselor with runaway kids in Hollywood, and he started directing rap videos. And he said, "Why don't you be my production manager?" I said, "What's that?" He told me. I was like, "Oh yeah, that's easy. I can do that." Next thing, I was his production manager, and that moved me down into being a line producer. And I moved from in front of the camera to behind the camera.
So you never look behind.
No, just keep, it's like doors open, and I went through and recreated myself, and that took that on, and really enjoyed the process. So, I don't think, I've worked hard jobs in my life. I worked in factories. I worked in the post office for 5 years. And so when I got in the film industry, I don't feel like I worked a day compared to that. Because I have the perspective. That's real work.
That's real work. Yeah. And you and I met. You were over here this summer for the Gideon Film Festival. Our mutual friend Kyle Sailors had invited you over, but my background is boxing, and you were working with, and still are, Termite Watkins, who was a fabulous fighter back in the 70s, actually fought Saul Manby for the world championship. And so we interviewed him. Great fighter, but better yet, just a great human being. Just what an amazing guy he is, huh?
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember the first time I was connected to meet with him. We were doing a movie down in Texas in Smithville with Dennis Quaid. And so I met with Termite. And in 5 minutes, I felt like, man, this is my brother. I'll do anything to help this guy, because he's such a great human being. Just a great human being.
And he's such a nice guy. people don't realize he can fight. I mean, literally, it's amazing. He is so gentle and sweet with people that he disarms you, and people don't realize he could knock you out real quick.
Well, years ago, when we've been working on this for a while to get this movie made, and I actually got in the gym with him at Fighter Nation in Houston, Texas, for 3 minutes. We put on gloves, and I fought. And at the time, I was weighing a lot more than I do now. And I tell you, after 3 minutes, I was, "Where's the EMTs, man? I had enough. I had enough." And he was just playing with me, of course. But yeah, he can fight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, anybody that uh, I think it's 61 wins and 5 losses with a record like, and and here's the thing: having been in the business all of my life from the time I was 14, guys like him that started at 10 years of age, and then by the time they're 20, somebody starting at 20 just never catches up because, they have 100 amateur fights, and he'd won national championships, him and Ray Leonard and all of those guys were contemporaries, fought in all of the same tournaments and went on international tournaments with the United States. So he has a rich history, and we're just really honored to know the guy.
Yeah, I had an opportunity years ago to go watch a boxing movie about that Panamanian boxer, and I'm blanking on his
Roberto
name.
Duran,
Roberto Duran,
the
and it was,
greatest.
yeah, and that movie was really cool. So I got to go in Houston with Termite and watch the movie, and he did color commentary throughout the whole movie. Because he knew him, and just to hear the background of what it was, because not being a fighter and not going to fights myself, it was a real education for me.
Well, talking about Roberto Duran, we'll come back and talk about John Duffy in a minute, but he was such a great fighter, and he's only 3-4 years younger than me. But my wife and I went on our honeymoon. I've lost 2 wives untimely deaths, and my wife and I were married in May of 22. So we went to Panama.
Wow.
For our honeymoon and did some cool things. But one of the coolest things I did, because I've met everybody in the business and I never met Roberto Duran, we went by his house 4 times. And on the last day we were there, we caught Roberto Duran. He lives in Panama City, in the capital. We caught him at home, and I've got pictures. And
wow,
so it
wow.
it was just awesome.
Yeah, no kidding. And what a great experience.
Yeah, it really was. And he was like the same weight as Termite, and I think he was in my opinion, the greatest lightweight that ever lived. But that's my opinion.
And Termite was supposed to fight him, I believe, a couple of times, and it just, for all kinds of reasons, they never came together, and the fights never came together. So,
well, they were in that category, the same weight classification. Duran started at 35 and moved up to 140, and I think Termite fought for the title at 140 pounds. So yeah, they were in the same era, and that would have probably been a good money making fight for him.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Enjoyed that.
That's for sure.
Well, John, what are you doing today?
Well, one is I do a lot of things, but with the Termite film, just to finish that up, we're working, with the Sailor Brothers. We're trying to move that forward into eventually production and be able to tell the story, because it's an incredible story that we've been working on for many, many years, of Termite's journey to eventually to Iraq and to achieving the impossible. So that's probably the one thing that I'm really passionate about as far as in the film industry. That's one. I also do a podcast show like yourself that I started a few years ago. Not as the technology here. You got it set up really cool, but I do my version of it, and it's called Live Courageously. And I've done about 88 shows with people who, everything from ex-military, police, people in the film industry, just people leading disabled movements, just people who are strong, courageous people who don't let fear stop them in life. So that's kind of the message. And I do a newsletter as well called Courage Newsletter. And so that's part of what I do. And then, of course, the film producing and a bunch of movies coming up in the future, hopefully up in Warner Brothers, that I'll be line producing, and just keeping busy.
You're staying busy. You're talking about a guy that lives courageously. Have you had a chance to interview Dan Bongino?
No, I have not. I know people who know him. I've never met him. I believe he's originally from New York, like myself.
Yeah.
I've heard him, of course, on his show and all the shows that he does, but I've never personally met him.
Yeah, I would think that'd be a great interview for you. How can somebody find John Duffy and connect with you in your podcast and all of that?
Well, I'm on YouTube. My channel is Live Courageously, John Duffy on YouTube. I also have a website called live-courageously.com, and you can always go there, live-courageously.com. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on X. But Live Courageously is the brand, and that's what I've been pushing ever since the pandemic. Because the reason I started it was I was up in Canada doing a movie with Kevin Sorbo, and it was during COVID, and I woke up and, everybody was in fear of COVID and the whole pandemic. And we weren't, he wasn't, I wasn't, and my friends were. And I said, we needed to have a message out there of courage, not fear. And so that was what started it off. And I wanted to promote people that no matter what the world throws at you, choose courage over fear.
Yeah, and what was it like working with Sorbo? I understand he's an awesome guy. He's a believer in Christ and not ashamed to share his faith.
Well, we did two movies up in Canada in Calgary. The first one was based on a true story called A Miracle in East Texas, and it was basically a true story about the biggest oil find in the history of America. So we did that movie, and then we did Left Behind. The last one we did together was Left Behind: Rise of the Antichrist, and he directed, produced, acted in it, and he also brought a lot of the cast to both movies. And him and his family would just, it was a great experience because we all treated everybody. And like you said, he's a Christian guy. He treated everybody like he wanted to be treated, with respect. And so the crew and all of us just had a great experience. And that's the way to work with people in life, no matter what you do. If you have that kind of values, it just leads to a different conclusion than if you have different values. If you think it's all about you, or that everything in this world is just about you, it's not. And you just get a different outcome when you do that.
Who are some of the most interesting people that you've worked with? Sorbo, I'm sure, being one of them. Termite being another.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, over time. I mean, one of the directors I work with, we did a faith-based horse movie called Vic Armstrong, and he's done so much second unit stunt stuff. A guy out of England, and the movie was called A Sunday Horse, which was based on a true story about this woman who was going to take compete in the Olympics, and ended up getting injured and not going and selling a horse. But it's a great story. So him, I mean, a lot of it is just the crew I work with. People, other producing partners. My producing partner James Quattrochi, who's an actor, producer, transpo guy out of New York, from the Bronx, also in the fitness business like me previously. So I just say that I've been, amazing people have been put in my life. And once I've been able to do what I do, every day is great.
Yeah, and going back to Termite, his story is so amazing, and you're not trying to produce a film about his boxing career. You're trying to produce a film about the president of the United States hiring him to go to Iraq to train the Iraqi Olympic boxing team. Tell us a little bit about that story.
Well, he went over there during the Iraq War because he wanted to serve, and he wasn't in the military. And he had this calling upon him that he needed to serve for freedom, and
Yeah.
America was over there trying to provide freedom. So he only thing that he had that he could offer was that his dad was a pest exterminator, and he had a pest license, and he grew up killing bugs, of all things, right? So
That's why they call him Termite,
that's
right?
why they call him termite. So he reaches out to them, and they basically said, well, we could use contractors killing bugs in the military base. Apparently there was giant bugs over in Iraq. So he prays on it, tells his wife, I think God's calling me to a mission. His wife said, God's not talking to you, Termite, don't go to Iraq. And he goes, no, I got to go to Iraq. So he goes to Iraq, and he's killing bugs in the base, gets into a beef with a colonel from Texas. They resolve it, and then they become friends, and they find out about his boxing. So he starts training the soldiers in boxing. The Iraqis love him. And then the Provisional Authority comes to him and says, hey, Termite, what are the odds you can put together a Iraqi boxing team for the Olympics in 10 months? And he said, are you kidding me? The odds are 1,000,000 to 1. They went, great odds. We don't need the million. We just need the one. Go do it. So now he's given this mission from America, from the president, from the Provisional Authority. In 10 months, he has to train these Iraqi kids, qualify them for the Olympics, get Iraq back into the Olympics because it had been kicked out because of Saddam Hussein's son's brutality, and not get killed by Al Qaeda. And in that 10 months, he pulls off the impossible, and he takes Iraq to the 2004 Olympics. It's just a powerful story about what you can do in life when you have faith and you have courage, and what you can accomplish.
That is an impossible story because There's no way. There is no way to take people off the street and create an Olympic team in 10 months.
Yeah, and you know this because you know boxing.
Yeah.
You right? You know it,
It
no,
takes
exactly.
it takes it takes 8 to 10 years. Well, on at the Olympic level, I mean, these kids start at 8 or 10 years of age. At 18, so 6 to 8 years with the amateurs to develop an Olympic caliber fighter. And I
Mm,
mean, and it's only 2% of those that are good enough to go. You take 1,000 kids, only or 100 kids, only 2 out of 100 are going to make it. That you train for 5 or 6 years. I
right,
mean, I trained 1,000 kids over the years, and there were only you know a half a dozen that fought at a professional level.
right.
So that is just amazing that he was able to do that, and that has been an incredible film.
Well, and you just imagine what it must have been like. I mean, you're in a war zone. You're in Iraq. Not only to train people, you're in a war zone. These kids didn't even have sneakers. They didn't have the normal stuff that you have in America. Even poor kids in America have. So, and then he became like a father figure and a big brother to these young kids and inspired them to their dreams, gave them this dream and told them that it was possible and encouraged them. And just that alone, when you hear the story, when I heard the story, I said, if this was fiction, I still say, wow, what a great story you made up. But it wasn't fiction, it's real. And
Yeah.
that's even more amazing.
What other and the interesting thing about that is that termite, you guys, and I won't mention a name because I might not be supposed to, had an agreement with a very big name, but they wanted to take termite's character and turn him into something that wasn't him.
Well, you always have a challenge, and I won't mention that either. You always have a challenge that Hollywood is it's not the best place for all kinds of reasons, and trying to find people who are going to be honest, ethical, who are going to work with you as partners. It's hard to do that in Hollywood. And so, sometimes you get a lot of promises, you get a lot of people telling you that what they're going to do, but then they don't do it, or they try and take it in another direction. And this is a story that you know all of us are driven for. It's a story that will inspire others. That's the reason, and we want to tell the story correctly. We want to use it to inspire people. We don't want it to turn it into something that it's not, or to put out stuff, woke stuff that doesn't affect what is real in that story. So we're finding a better way to do it, and that's what we're working on.
And not only that, I mean, termite's a clean cut Christian guy,
Yes, he is.
and he didn't want him defiling his character, and turning him into some, cursing, drinking, thug that he wasn't.
Well, when he started this journey years ago, when this story first came about, after he came back from Iraq and other people were trying to work on it, friends of ours who were originally got it, a film producer who's his friend and my friend, at that time it was pitched to Hollywood. And, what they wanted to do at that time, they wanted to take the story and somehow change it to make his character and America the bad guys, because they didn't want America to be the good guys in the world. They wanted to say, well, America's the country that goes around destroying the world. That was the message Hollywood wanted to say. And at that time, Termite walked away from it because he was like, no, one, is not true. And two, it's not the story. So we're not going to do it. And money ain't going to change that around. You can't just buy me to tell that story, because I don't want to be part of that story. And he had principles, and that's the thing in life. You got to stick to your principles.
Do you see now? Of course, you're talking about the Sailors brothers, and Kyle, the older brother, sitting in the studio right now. These guys were in Hollywood for years, and they left Hollywood because it was pretty. As you talked about, there weren't a lot of people with character there anymore. And I think a lot of people have, even Kevin Sorbo and people like that, have left Hollywood because it's become so corrupt. And
Well, that's true, and a lot of people have made the thing to leave because it's a difficult place. But at the same time, there's a lot of great people who have stories to tell. Like when I first came to Hollywood, I met some of the evilest, worst people I'd ever met in my life, and I said, if this is all there is, I'm going to get out of this industry, because I didn't want to associate with that. But luckily, I was able to find great people too, both in Hollywood and outside of Hollywood. And now it seems that the only people I know and work with are great people with good morals and good values. So they're there, and that's who you got to find your family, so to speak. That's the family you want to be part of.
So you still see good people there.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and there is, and I always say, from a Clint Eastwood movie, there's good, bad, and ugly
yeah.
everywhere, and there's ugly in Hollywood and really ugly, and there's some bad, but there's also a lot of good, and you what you focus on, you seem to get, and I focus on the good, and I seem to find the good, and somehow I don't see too much of the ugly, or at least I don't associate with the ugly and bad anymore. So
Well, I understand. Of course, you will know this man very well. Arnold Schwarzenegger came to Hollywood years ago to Venice Beach to become the best bodybuilder that ever lived, and
it
worked
did
with
it.
Joe Wheeler and all those guys. And I understand, even after his Hollywood fame and being governor, he still goes to the gym there in Venice every day.
Well, I'm in that same gym every day. I work out right next to him. I work out next to Frank Stallone, who also was a great guy, by the way, and he works out there. I work out next to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., another great guy who works out there as well, and then a bunch of other people. So I'm honored to to hang out in that gym every morning, to get to that gym and work out with some cool people and just a lot of other people as well. Is a fun experience.
Yeah, he's like 77 or 78
Yeah,
now, and he still goes to the gym every day.
yeah, he rides his bike and he works out there whenever he's in town. Yeah.
Is the Muscle Beach equipment still out there on the beach that was years ago?
Yeah, so they upgraded it on Venice Beach. That's separate from Gold's. That's the city owns Muscle Beach, and Gold's is a private enterprise. But the Muscle Beach equipment's all out there, and they've upgraded it. And it was closed down during COVID, and now it's back open again. So yeah, people are out there. But I work at Gold's because you know they don't have much. It's funny. They still have equipment from, I think it's from the '60s. I mean, they haven't upgraded some of their equipment, but it isn't about their equipment. It's about the environment.
The environment.
People coming in and having a good time, staying in shape and working out.
Well, I had a heavyweight boxer, and we were there in the '90s. That's the last time I've been to Muscle Beach, and he fought in the Forum. And Jerry
Huh.
Buss, Jerry Buss had us sit in his box. Mr. T was in there and stuff like that. So, and he got 2 wins in the Forum, and so we had a one. So we'd go to Gold's Gym, and we'd go down Muscle Beach. We're from Tennessee. We go out there. We want to check all those things out. But I remember I was in the Marine Corps. In the '60s, and Muscle Beach was thriving in those days
Yeah.
as well.
Well, it still is, and this is my second visit. The first one was at the Gideon Film Festival because I had this feeling I had to come to Tennessee, Nashville. I didn't know why, and of course, then all of a sudden, all kind of pieces came together, and the film festival that was put on, Gideon Film Festival, was fantastic. Met some great people, and then I'm back in Nashville, and Kyle suggested that if I spend more than 3 days, I have to move here. I don't know if that's true, but I'm starting to feel that pressure. So who knows? But I love the town, and it's some great people here.
Well, we're glad to have you here. You're a great guy, and you and Termite came together. And what are some other projects? Anything that you're working on now that you're excited about?
Well, I think I have a bucket list that unfortunately I don't think I'm going to live long enough to get anywhere close to achieving it. But I got two books I wrote. One is two memoirs of my life. One is called Black Irish, Not Your Average White Boy. And it's about my journey from growing up in the South Bronx and this Black and Puerto Rican community and dropping out of high school and my journey to make it to Hollywood. So it tells a little bit of that story. And then I also wrote a political book, a memoir as well about my political journey, and it's called From Mao to Reagan, a Born Again American. And it tells my journey about going from being a Maoist communist leader for 10 years of my life and moving into becoming a patriot and a born again American and a
Wow.
conservative. So that's both of those books are written. I got to finish up some of the work with it. And I'm procrastinating,
You haven't
but
published either one?
not yet, but I'm going to get it done in
Well,
2025.
I'm going to challenge you.
Uh oh. Another challenge. I'll take it.
I just finished number 11 that just came off the press a week or two ago, called "A Trainer's Tales from Ali to Holyfield."
Wow.
And if you'll read it, I'll give you a copy of that.
Read it. I'll read it. And it'll inspire me. I need that push.
But you were a communist that became a born again conservative.
Correct. But yeah, born again American conservative. Yeah, patriot.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I grew up in a neighborhood. Like my dad. Both my parents were Irish immigrants. My dad fought in World War II in the Philippines. Ended up dying. My first memory is watching him die in my apartment in the South Bronx at the age of 4. So I was raised in poverty by my widowed mom, me and my brother. And then the neighborhood changed, and then the 60s came. And so I hung out with the Black Panthers, I hung out with the Black Muslims, and I got radicalized. And then I, wanted to make a better world because I was living in poverty, my neighborhood, people doing drugs. And so I got radical and figured that we were going to change the world and create a utopia. And that's what the promise of communism was, to create that utopia. And then at the age of 26, I led a trip of young people to communist Yugoslavia and China. So I was, a leader. I was always a leader, but I believe that that was the path to change the world for the better. But little by little, I started to see behind the curtain, and I realized that communism was about no freedom. It was about a dictatorship. It wasn't about what I thought it was about or what I wanted. And so I started to get disillusioned. Eventually, I quit it. And then over time, when 9/11 happened, was really my big change because I was a New Yorker. I took it personally that New York was hit by the terrorists. And I started to look back in my life and said, you believe this, you were wrong. You believe this, you were wrong. You believe this, you were wrong. And I kind of recreated myself at that point in my identity. And I said, I love America. My parents gave me the American dream, and I didn't recognize it because I was young and a knucklehead. And so I changed a lot of my beliefs, and I
Mhm.
still want to change the world for the better, but I felt that wasn't the way you do it. There's another way, and we still need to make things better. Of course, there is no such thing as utopia, and that's not what we're going after, but we can always improve things. So I moved to a different side. I got to work with the Marines. You were in the Marines. I got to do some training videos with the US Marine Corps, and I met the best young men and women that I ever met in my life. And I was like, this is the side I want to be on. These are the people that I respect.
How did you become a believer in Christ?
Well, I went through phases in that. One phase was I was a Catholic. I grew up Catholic, and I went to Catholic school, and that I dropped out of. When I became a communist, of course, I became a committed, true believing atheist. And when I came back to it, I started to, once again, God, all the people in my world were believing Christians, seemed to keep coming into my world. Termite Watkins, a lot of the people that I work with in the film industry, the people we did the movie A Sunday Horse, a woman. So I'm meeting all these people, and I'm going, okay, why have all these people coming into my life? And then, I met this one, a friend put this pastor, who was a former Marine, recon Marine, police officer, and he introduced me to him and his family, Pastor Rudy Gonzalez, one of the greatest human beings, him and his family. And so I met them, and he was telling me a story. And he said, after I got out of the Marines and after I was a police officer, I was burnt out. I was, really lost faith and everything. And he said, I went to church. My wife convinced me to go to church. And the pastor was talking about sex trafficking of young kids. And he said, I sat there in the church, Duffy, and I cursed God. And I was like, God, how can you let this happen? And he said, for the first time, I heard a voice say to me, no, Rudy, how can you let this happen? And he said, at that point, my life changed. And I realized that I needed to create a mission to rescue children and girls from sex traffickers. So he formed the ministry, and he went on a journey for 20 years. Him and his family has rescued hundreds and hundreds of young girls from sex traffickers. But when he told me that story, it was powerful. And then a year later, we went to a wedding, the person who introduced me to, and he was baptizing people in the ocean. And I said to him, hey, Rudy, how about me? And he's like, let's go. And so he baptized me. And so, being surrounded by people of faith just gave me a different understanding of who's on the good side and who's on the evil side. And
Yeah.
I didn't have that before. I didn't have it, strong. And now it's just, not to say everybody I know is of faith. It's not, but the people I know who are really just doing good for others, just seem to all be people of faith who I respect.
Amen.
You know.
Yeah, I want to ask you a question. Because you said something that probably nobody else um, caught, but I caught it because I was a kid that was born in Alabama. My
Hmm.
parents came out of the cotton fields of Alabama,
Wow.
moved to the inner city of Detroit when I was very young. But all of my life, uh, my I would ask my grandparents, what is our nationality, and they'd say, well, we're Irish, we're Black Irish.
Huh.
And then years later, I was at an international boxing tournament, and there were some guys from Northern Ireland there with the Irish team. And I had a kid that won the Junior World Championship that year. And I said, listen, this is my name. Is there any name like this in Ireland? They said, yeah, that name is still prominent, Pharr, in the five northernmost counties of Ireland. What is a Black Irish?
Well, different things in my connotation. Why I took it from that, because there was there's stories of the Black Irish, obviously dark hair as opposed to the blonde hair. There was stories about that some of Ireland had a Spanish influence, and so there was that part of mixture with the Irish. So the Black Irish were that. So I've read a lot of different things in history about it, but for me, I chose it because here was a kid who was first generation Irish American, and I hung out my friends and my identity when I grew up was with the blacks in my neighborhood. That's who I identified. I dressed like that. I talk like that. That's who. So it was like, it was a play on that because that's the people that I felt most comfortable with. It wasn't until my 20s that I started to like get along and meet and start trying to understand white people. Then I was like, okay, they're different. Let me try and figure these white people out, right? So it was a journey that way. So that's why I chose that title. But my family my father came from Northern Ireland, County Tyrone, Duffy, and then my mother came from County Mayo, O'Donnell.
Those are Irish names.
Yeah.
Far is not an Irish name.
I know that. So that's kind of made
crazy.
Well, remember there was one of the first presidents of Ireland was Spanish and Irish, and I'm blanking on his name right now. Back in when they got their freedom in 19 after the 1916 uprising in Ireland. So
and see, I've got relatives in Mississippi that came from Ireland that are buried there in the late 1830s. So I guess after the War of 1812, my relatives came over a little earlier than yours. You got here as soon as you could, but mine got here in the 1820s or 1830s and settled in northern Mississippi, real close to where Elvis was born, Tupelo, just a short distance from Tupelo, Mississippi.
Well, the Irish in America have a unique, wild history because you've had Irish come here and fight on the side of Spain against America. I mean, the Irish kind of like they get into fights anywhere. So it was a little bit it's an interesting culture. I mean, when I went back to Ireland, I went back 3 times and we had a reunion. I didn't have any contact and relatives reached out on the internet. And I say, once again, this is like where God's hand is at work, not mine. And they reached out and said, we think we're related to you. And I'd never had any desire to go to Ireland. So on St. Patrick's Day in 2008, they threw a reunion in County Mayo and Foxford for us. And they had a big banner up, welcome back, American cousins. And it was a miracle. I was like this. And then I reconnected with my whole Irish family and just all these roots that I didn't even know I had. And it just all kind of came together again. And so that's why my life's been like that. Every time it's like somehow boom, something else is put here for me. And I was like, I take it.
Wow,
I take it.
Amazing. John, you're a real interesting character.
Yeah, my wife might say that too,
yeah,
but
you're a great guy. But I've really enjoyed having you on the program today. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you'd like to tell our audience?
you know, the only thing is, I guess, because you got a great show and you have a great audience, is just to, echo your message. But, people just in the times we're going through to find a way to always choose courage over fear, to always find a way to choose love over hate, to find a way to like, make a difference in life for everybody. Be that person who brings light into the world, not darkness. The world has enough darkness and it just needs people who bring light, and whether it's the message, a Christian message, or just your behavior. But more important is what you do, not what you say.
Yeah.
Because too many people talk and don't actually walk their talk. So be one of those people. We need more people who step up. Whatever gift God's given you, whatever your strength is, be one of those people who step up and use that gift to make life better for people. And we're going to have a better country and we're going to have a better world.
Better world. Jesus said, "I'm the light of the world," and I think when we know Him like you do, people can see that light in you. So be light instead of darkness is what you're saying.
Yes, indeed, indeed, brother.
If I let you get away without asking you this question, anybody that watches, and we've got a movie producer on
got
here.
Me worried already.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to ask you about Diddy.
No, thank God I had never met him, and I never wanted to meet him, or never. Thank God now I never meet him because he's in jail where he belongs. But yeah.
But people, anytime because I know a few people that have been involved in the business, how would somebody get connected? And of course, I've got a granddaughter that's 16 now that was in 7 plays last year, and she's been taking, singing lessons. She sings and dances. She's been acting since she was 6 or 7. And it's kind of like boxing. You start a kid out at 6 or 7, and they learn the trade. And you take someone like my granddaughter learns a trade. Obviously, she has a better opportunity of getting a part somewhere of somebody that's just walking off the street. But how does somebody, you went to Hollywood to be an actor and ended up being, like you say, on the other side of the camera. How does somebody get involved in the business?
Well, there's different ways. So, like obviously, the acting way is one path. If that's your journey and your creative, it's the hardest. Quite frankly, it's the hardest way because there's the most competition and there's the most people wanting to do it because it on the surface it seems very attractive. So if you're going to do that, one you got to get good at your craft. You got to study because if you don't study, you think it's easy. It's not. Whether you're doing theater or film, so you got to study, master your craft, and then you got to build relationships and network and get to know people and just connect with like-minded people as yourself in the industry. So that's if you're choosing if the path of going down, say, the creative acting path. The other way is if you're coming in as a crew and you want to work on films, then at first you may have to volunteer or intern or find jobs at the lowest level, which is production assistants, which you go around and help everybody, or you help each department, whatever department you want to work in. If you want to work in camera or wardrobe or makeup, volunteer to work and learn from people and learn. I mean, I always tell people, in sales they used to have a thing, ABS, always be selling, and I say always be learning. No matter where we are, the industry keeps changing, the technology keeps changing. I'm not going to stop learning until there's 6 feet of dirt above me, and then I'm going to be thinking, how can I get out of this dirt? But it's like always be learning seriously, and then just network with people, find groups that are similar, and get involved. And you can go to film school. I teach a UCLA extension, a film production, but even more important than school, I think, is doing it. Personally, I learned myself. My first job on a feature film was at the top. I hustled my way into being a line producer. I didn't work my way up. I
Yeah.
just talked my way into it, and I produced, and I did what I said and more. And so, whatever you do, always be willing to do more. Be willing to do the extra mile, because if you don't, because people are going to get picked by what they accomplish. So if I see somebody who works slacker, it's going to be hard.
The word slackers.
Yeah.
John Duffy, how does somebody connect with you one more time?
So you go to live slash dash courageously.com is my website, or you can do the same, live courageously on YouTube. You can find me on Facebook, John Duffy, or you can find me on Instagram, John Duffy, or on X, John Duffy. I'm all over those places, and you can reach out to me.
John, thank you so much for joining us in Your Corner today.
Thank you.
What a pleasure.
Hey, pleasure for me. Thank you.
Yeah,
Enjoyed it. Thank you, everybody.
Friends, thank you for watching. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next edition of In Your Corner.